Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. These are some trying times, an understatement as we continue to grapple with dual pandemics, COVID-19 and racial reckoning. So let me ask you a question. Are you more irritable than usual? When was the last time you slept peacefully through the night? Are you dealing with depression, anxiety, or frustration? Are you the one keeping it all together for your kids, your spouse, or other family members? Let me ask that again. Who is taking care of you? Up next on Another View, internal medicine specialist Dr. Indy Jones on why we must say yes to self-care. Stay tuned. Another View will be right back after this news from NPR and WHRV News.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. We have a great show today. Doc Indy is with us, and we're going to be talking about stress and your mental and physical health. But before we do that, there are 3 community events that I think you'll be very, very interested in, and so I want to make sure that you have the information. You know that this month is National Mental Health Awareness Month, and the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the Coastal Virginia chapter, is partnering with Dr. Patricia King of Dr. King and Associates for a virtual town hall about mental health challenges facing our Hampton Roads community. It is tonight, May 6th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. And so there will be a panel of legislators, mental health professionals, and constituents from the local, state, and national level to share information about their experiences and recommendations about mental health and mental health services that all of us here in the community can use. So in order to get the Zoom link and to find out more information, visit NAMI, N-A-M-I, coastalvirginia.org, or you can call 757-499-2041. That's 757-499-2041, and join the Zoom call this evening at 6 p.m. The next event, those of you who are history buffs, you'll really be interested in this. The Colonial Williamsburg Department of Archaeology is holding a behind the fence open house this Saturday at the original site of First Baptist Church, Williamsburg. Now, this church was founded in 1776 by free and enslaved Black people, and they are doing an archaeological dig at the original site. You can take a tour of the site and hear about what the archaeologists have discovered thus far. And there will also be interaction with Gowan Pamphlet. He was the church's first minister from the 1700s. Reverend James Ingram portrays Reverend Pamphlet. It's open and free to everyone. It's from 9:30 until 4 on this coming Saturday. And the free parking is at the Art Museum of Colonial Williamsburg. You can find out more at First Baptist Church 1776.org. And in full disclosure, I am a member of the Let Freedom Ring Foundation board, which is working with this project. And the last event for today is Fuse Fest is coming back to Norfolk. It is a wonderful event by Teens with a Purpose and others, and it is celebrating hope and irrepressible love. This is the 8th year for Fuse Fest, and it is a community celebration of culture and art. And there will be so many activities for young and young at heart, so everyone can come out and enjoy. Your lawn chairs are welcome, and it is going to be on Saturday, May 22nd from 3 until 9 p.m., and it is going to be at Purpose Park, which is located in the St. Paul's area. And so that is May 22nd from 3 until 9 p.m. at Purpose Park. Come on out and have a great time. So we are well into 2021 and the COVID-19 pandemic still hasn't gone away. Neither have racial tensions. In the past 2 weeks alone, we've watched the funerals of two African American men who were killed by police. Many of us are still working from home while juggling hybrid learning with our kids. Too many are still unemployed, and the list goes on and on. So the question is, are you stressed out? When was the last time you took time out for you? And why is that so important? We're super happy to have back with us on Another View internal medicine specialist Dr. Indy Jones with some advice on self-care. Hello, Dr. Indy. How are you?
Hello, Barbara. I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great. It is so good to have you back with us. So I got to tell you, Doc Indy, as you'd like to be called, yesterday I was feeling super emotional and I was in the shower and I started crying. And I immediately started scolding myself and saying, put your big girl panties on. You got to keep it together. Suck it up. Why do we, particularly as women and particularly as Black women, do that to ourselves instead of allowing ourselves to feel what we feel?
Sounds like you maybe read that somewhere or heard someone talking about feeling your feelings. Yes. It is something that we do naturally, Barbara. I just had a conversation with a client that I'm coaching about our automatic responses. It's the way that we were trained. It's the way that we show up in the world today based on our past experiences, what our parents taught us that we needed to do. I think it's a reflection for African American women about the double role that many times we've had to play. As many of us are single moms, myself included, different scenarios on how that happens. But there's a lot of responsibility, and it's just in our DNA to take care of everyone else, oftentimes to our own neglect. But like you said, we have these emotions, and it's very therapeutic when we allow ourselves to feel what we feel and not feel guilty about it. Just allow the emotions to flow, make room for them, and allow it to just run its course so that it doesn't build up in our inner being. It helps to process in order to reduce the risk that the stress has on you and your physical health as well. Yeah. It's all about the mind and the body connection.
The mind and the body connection. And as we go through these, what I call dual pandemics, because we've got COVID-19, which very much affects mentally as well as physically. And then we have what is happening in our country in terms of race and racism. And what are you hearing, seeing from your patients in terms of how people are coping?
Well, what I'm seeing that a lot of people not coping is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of frustration. I'm seeing where it can almost become an obsession, if you will, about what's going on, as opposed to turning in and looking at what it is that you need to protect your senses. So unfortunately, I don't see a great deal of coping. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some people are, but I would give you maybe just what I see as promoting the ability to get through these emotional upsets. And one of those things is the ability to unplug. So I see that those who don't unplug, who are constantly on social media or watching the news, it's causing them to have the stress. But for those people who can focus on themselves and self-care, not having their head in the sand and being in denial, but finding that balance, that's the more healthier route that I see happening and that I recommend that we all focus on.
Mm-hmm. So when you say, we use these terms self-care and mindfulness and so forth, what exactly does that mean? What is self-care?
Sure. So self-care is it's a mindset which will result in this intentional practice where you schedule and you make, activities that are going to promote your overall well-being, and you make yourself a priority. So I always say women, we're good at organizing things for our family, for our jobs. We're the CEO at home, CEO in the office. We know how to get it done. But if we don't put ourselves first, we're going to burn out, and we're not going to, we're going to be less efficient in those areas that are important to us, our families, our jobs, our careers, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it means having a plan, not just a theory or that's a good idea, but a literal plan that's written down, that what you ask yourself, what is it that I need today? And you give it to yourself. So if that means rest, if that means peace and setting boundaries within your relationships, not returning a call or responding to this or that. If it means going for a nice walk, getting some fresh air and getting your exercise. If it means just, again, unplugging and doing nothing and being okay with that, you have to know and listen to yourself what your mind needs and what your body needs and give it to yourself in a very intentional way. Like I said, you have to write it down, plan it out, map it out. And it's not going to eliminate the stress, but it will help you navigate it in a more efficient way that doesn't negatively impact your health.
I can hear people saying, oh, yeah, right, but I got to get this done. how do you overcome that guilt of, because a lot of people feel guilty about taking that, they feel selfish, I guess is a better way to say, that they feel selfish about taking time for themselves. But you maintain that if you don't, there won't be time for anyone else.
Exactly. A lot of the patients that I see in the hospital setting, again, it's that neglect. Or, one extreme example, I may discover that someone has cancer that maybe had they gone for that mammogram or that colonoscopy, it could have been caught early, that it's widespread. And I hear that all the time. Well, I was too busy doing this, that, and the other, taking care of this person, and so I use that not as a scare tactic, but just to let you know how real and important that self-care is, because, part of that is taking care of your temple. I'm a woman of faith, and I always tell like-minded people that, in order to worship God, we have to take care of the vessel with which we do that. So you have to kind of think of what your core values is, if it's your faith or whatever, and let that motivate you to do what it is that you need to do. Because otherwise, sometimes it is a wake-up call. Something bad happens, and you say, hey, I really need to take better care of myself. Again, back to the medical aspect, I see patients, young women, Barbara, and younger than me, and I think I'm still young.
I look, Doc Indy, I tell myself that, but I know I'm not. But
yeah. Even if I'm over half a century, I think I'm doing pretty good for that, past the half mark.
Exactly.
But I see these young African-American women coming in with strokes, kidney failure, heart attacks, because they didn't, know they had high blood pressure, but they did, and they didn't take the medicine. They didn't see the need because they were too busy. You know what I mean? They didn't check. And I always say ignorance isn't bliss. So in that holistic health plan that I'm always encouraging everyone to create, it has to encompass every aspect of your being. And this process isn't meant to stress you out further, Barbara. What happens is that when you start taking the steps towards better health in a holistic fashion, and you start feeling good, and you start seeing the changes in the well-being that you start to experience, you'll be like, wow, why wasn't I doing this sooner? And then it becomes second nature. So even if it feels guilty, do it anyway. And then you will begin to rewire your brain. Your mindset will start to shift, and you'll be a different person. You'll be a better person for it. But it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. We're all a work in process.
It's all a work in process, and it's all a journey. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. This weekend is Mother's Day. We'd love to hear from you moms out there. What are you doing for your own self-care? Give us a call and let's talk about it. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Doc Indy, did you notice because of COVID, that people were more engaged in terms of coming in for their annual checkups and so forth, or less?
Less. And I think there are a lot of factors that played into that. I'm in the hospital setting, but still I know we got backed up. People were afraid to come out. People were told to stay home. So
Mm-hmm.
there were a lot of dynamics at play, but the doctor's offices still were doing their due diligence to have safety measures in place. But again, there was definitely a fear. And so people are definitely behind in their screenings and their checkups. But I think it's getting a little better now. But when we were in the thick of it last year, definitely not.
Mm-hmm. So, what would you advise people to do now, now that things have opened up a little bit more and so forth, in terms of why is it so critical that those annual checkups and all of that still happen or start to
It
happen
is
again?
extremely important. I just did a Zoom conference with women who, logged on with one of my colleagues who's an oncologist,
Mm-hmm.
and early detection is key. So again, a lot of times fear will immobilize you, and COVID, if you have some fear at baseline that prevents you from doing the things that you should do for your health, COVID didn't help that much.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very, very important to get in touch with your primary care doctor. That's the main person, and say, what am I due for? What blood work am I due for? What screening test am I due for? Make those very key important appointments. And I'm talking to more women who are doing that. They're having some discoveries. Several of the women I coach and talk to, we're in the same age bracket, are finding they have silent high cholesterol that they didn't know about. That seems to be a biggie, and that's one of those conditions in what I call the triple threat. I reference high blood pressure and diabetes a lot, and the high cholesterol, again, putting us at risk. In African Americans, we're at higher risk of having something and having worse outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it is. We get diagnosed with things later than our Caucasian brothers and sisters. So it is so important to have that good relationship with your primary care doctor to coordinate your overall care.
I'm curious, since you work in a hospital setting especially, how stressful it must have been and continue to be for your colleagues and for your fellow healthcare workers. What steps are you all taking in terms of self-care? Do you even have time for self-care when you're so busy
That's
taking
a
care of
very,
everyone
very
else?
good question. Very good question. And that's something that a lot of times we can fall into the category of neglect. But you know me, I'm not letting it happen for myself. I think it's getting a little bit easier for us as well because the numbers are down. But like you said, COVID is still alive and unfortunately well in some cases. But we have things in place. We were just blindsided with this thing. We didn't have protective wear and things like that. So I'm seeing my colleagues doing a little bit more themselves, again, now that the numbers are down and we're getting a little bit more of quote unquote normalcy. But typically speaking, I have to be honest, doctors aren't the best patients themselves. That was even before COVID, So hopefully I can be a positive influence on, on my little circle of colleagues as well. They know what I do outside of the hospital, so I hope I'm inspiring them too. One can only hope.
So, Dr. Indy, what are some of the things that we ignore that our body is telling us that we're either too stressed out or we need to pay attention because the body is starting to break down? I'm trying to get to that mind-body connection.
Sure.
And in terms of what are some things that you can say to folks, if this is happening to you, pay attention.
Okay. If this is happening to you, pay attention. I would say one thing that comes to mind is if you're having excessive fatigue, you may have some, like decreased exercise tolerance. Maybe you're more short of breath. Maybe you're just tired, feeling worn down, don't have energy. You may feel some palpitations, in your chest. All those things are kind of signs that something's off, something's not right. You may need to have some cardiac workup, just some basic blood work and things like that. So when you're not working, feeling that you're at your optimal level of energy, sometimes you can just start to just have, what you need. You have to look at your sleep patterns, what the quality and quantity of sleep is that you're getting, see if that's factoring in. But if you're seeing a major difference, or if you're seeing a change in your weight or your GI system, your digestive system, a change in your bowel patterns, seeing anything. One thing that really I hear a lot sometimes when it comes to that, colon cancer is a big thing that I'm passionate about because what happened with my mom, never having a screening, but some people will see a little blood in their stool and they say, oh, it's just a hemorrhoid. So I would say don't self-diagnose. If there's any change from the ordinary, and you have to really sit and be still and just know what you feel. Pay attention. Pay attention. And any change, you need to talk with your doctor. Some people can go to the extreme, but when something is off. When you're not, again, having that level of energy or you're having some new pain somewhere. Again, I'm constantly diagnosing cancer and different things in patients who ignored the pain symptom and thought it would just go away, or ignored the little lump in their breast and just thought it was an infection. So you have to know your body. You have to tune in, see what you feel, see what you're feeling internally and even externally. When it comes to breast cancer screens, my colleague says, she always says, get familiar with your girls, do your self-breast examination. So there's so many things that you have to just tune into when you're just still enough to feel it. Because a lot of times we're on automatic pilot and we just ignore things. But take the time to sit still and say, okay, is there anything that's a little bit out of the ordinary? Don't ignore it. Just go see your doctor.
And when we talk about stress, because some people think that stress just means, I'm harried or I'm just busy. But stress can actually manifest itself in physical ways, can it not?
This is so true. It can. It can cause certain symptoms, mimic certain conditions. So you have to be able to differentiate the two. So again, the chest pain is a good example. And, recently we had Heart Health for Women Month, right? It's not too far out from that. So a lot of times with women's health and heart disease, they don't present very typically with the crushing chest pain. And, they may have some of the other symptoms, like I said, just kind of fatigue, decreased exercise endurance and things like that. But if you happen to go to the doctor and you're having chest pain or shortness of breath or whatever, and they do a full workup and everything is negative, they root out all the potential bad things, then it's oftentimes related to stress causing the symptoms, and you have to work on that. So a lot of times I talk with my patients and just ask them whether they have a diagnosable disease or not, just how much is stress playing into why I'm seeing you here today in the hospital. And 9 times out of 10, they acknowledge that there is some stress going on.
There. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. We're talking about self-care and the things that we, particularly as women, need to do in order to take care of ourselves. Let's talk to Lizzie in Virginia Beach. Hi, Lizzie. You're on the air.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Good.
I tell you, one thing that I've found a problem with is my daughter and I both use our OBGYN as our primary for the most part, and she's not seeing patients because of COVID. And so we've had teleconferences with her. I was able to get a colonoscopy, and she read the results. But, little things that you kind of need to see the doctor about has been challenging from the patient side. And I understand the doctors have to stay healthy too, but it's a challenge.
Okay, let me get a response from Doc Indy. Thanks so much for the call, Lizzie. Is it have things changed, and should we be more comfortable, Doc Indy, with teleconferences and doing things differently than we did pre-COVID in terms of seeing our doctor?
Yes, I think we need to be flexible, and that's the key thing. I've been able to get in to see my doctor a couple of times since COVID. So you have to be flexible, and, if it's a situation that is continuing for some time and you can't be seen, you may have to be flexible enough to see another doctor. So I would not let something go unchecked for indefinitely without a in-person evaluation. You have to again, there are certain situations where that's the best thing, but every scenario is different in terms of physicians' practices, how big of a practice it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, they have their own health, or like she said, they have their own health to deal with. So you have to be flexible, but it definitely is a time where we have to be safe. We have to open ourselves up to other ways of having evaluations, but there's nothing that beats that in-person evaluation, especially if there's something majorly different about your health.
About what's
And
going
you can
on.
get it
Mm-hmm.
done.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can get it done. It just may mean you need to see someone else.
Yeah, if you're just joining us, we're talking about the importance of self-care with internal medicine specialist Dr. Indy Jones. Let's talk to Kathy in Virginia Beach. Hi, Kathy. You're on the air.
Hi. I just wanted to stress the importance of keeping records, especially when somebody can't go with you to the doctor. Some people find that, having another person there helps them remember. But if you find yourself a cute little notebook that you like looking at, and you bring it every time, and you write your dates, and you write your blood pressure and your weight every time, and what your concerns are, you can write ahead of time, questions for the doctor, and write your answers right back in there. And then you can check back and see what's going on. And it just helps you be able to refer back. Oh, what did they say? Oh, that's right. Well, now I have to make this appointment. Mm-hmm. So it's very important to keep records.
Kathy, what does your notebook look like?
I have about 4 because I was diagnosed with kidney failure about 15 years ago. And so over time, I have big, fat notebooks because I did receive a beautiful gift of a transplant from my brother.
Oh.
And so I have all those labs. I have all the EOBs from all that time, 10, 11 years ago now. And it just occasionally I'll go through there and just remember what it was like to be in that place where I was so frightened and confused, but then able to say, oh, well, here's what they said. And then the beautiful day that my brother called and said, I'm a perfect match for you, and we're going to go ahead. And it was wonderful.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Kathy. We appreciate it. And thanks for the
welcome.
call. What a wonderful way to keep your family history, medical history too, Doc Indy.
Yes. And I really appreciate the comments that Kathy made. She is so right. And what it did remind me of, however, is that, as our loved ones get older, they need advocates. And so what I see a lot of times is I'll have an elderly patient in the hospital, try to get some information from the family members. They may have some dementia even. And they say, well, they just go to the doctor. They don't tell us, we don't go with them. So I on the flip side, I would really encourage us to advocate for our family members, and as much as we possibly can be there with them. They may not have the savvy to be able to take notes and take in and process the information that the doctor is giving them. So having an advocate for some of our vulnerable relatives and friends, I think, is something that I would encourage everybody to do. Not just thinking about your own health, but thinking about your loved ones who maybe aren't able to do the things that they need to do to be in the know. So many times patients don't know their conditions or what medications they're on. And again, they just need somebody to help them keep it all together.
So how do we know the difference between I'm just feeling kind of blue today and clinical depression, or we're moving in that direction in terms of our mental health? What do we, how should we be alarmed every time we feel a little down, or how do you balance that, I guess is what I'm asking.
Very, very good question. So we're all going to experience different emotions at different times. And again, I just encourage us to process them. It's when you see a persistent pattern over time where, you're losing interest in the things that you normally find interest in. You're feeling a sense of hopelessness and different things where you really find yourself sinking into a more of a pattern of depression or sadness. So there's one thing to have a bad day or a moment within any given day, but when it's persistent over time, weeks, months, then it's definitely something to be of concern and talk with, again, your primary care doctor. And I always try to emphasize the fact that the stigma needs to go away. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you if you have to be on medication, okay? In a holistic fashion for your health, it may involve some medication. So a lot of people say they don't like to take pills. And I'm like, what's the stigma with the pill? I don't believe in taking a lot of unnecessary medications, but sometimes you need something to just get you stabilized. For example, with blood pressure, if your blood pressure, is through the roof, and yes, we know you need to make some lifestyle changes to help bring that down, decrease the salt, exercise, different things like that. In that moment of that very high blood pressure, we need to give you some medicine and get you started on something. Maybe over time you can, reduce it or come off of it. Who knows? But again, we want to take away the stigma back to the mental health aspect of needing medication, of needing some therapy if you need that. So again, going back to your primary care doctor to get the proper diagnosis and assessment. You may have situational depression, where you're going through a life transition, a loss of a loved one. There's so much loss from 2020. And so allowing yourself to go through the normal grieving process. But when it becomes pathologic and you can't function, you need to talk with your doctor and come up with a good plan to help you get through the transition that you're going through.
So the role of, African Americans in particular, but everybody who are very spiritual people. I want to talk about the role of meditation, spirituality, and prayer as part of your mental health journey and helping you with that journey.
Sure. There, in terms of people of faith, you have some stigma around those modalities for total health. I always say I know how to keep things in perspective as it relates to my faith, and everyone's faith is an individual thing. So I encourage meditation from the medical perspective of what that looks like. There's different types, and again, some people may feel it's a conflict of their faith. But me speaking about myself personally, when we just use the gift of the breath of life, God gave us breath. That is a meditative tool that you can use where you just are sitting still and focusing on your breath. You can always incorporate your faith. If there's a particular scripture, I like using certain scriptures as positive affirmations to meditate upon God's word. So meditation is going to look different for everybody, but science has shown, regardless of what form of meditation you use, Barbara, it changes your brain. There's a certain little almond-sized part of our brain, the amygdala. So over time, over several weeks, months of consistent meditation doesn't mean you have to meditate for very long and get in a certain position, okay? Different ways to do it. But it shrinks that area, and that area of the brain is associated with anxiety and fear, okay? It improves your cognitive abilities. There's so many benefits to meditation, so I definitely encourage learning more about it and what type of meditation would work good for you.
We have a question.
And same thing with prayer. Prayer, again, it's an individual thing, but I believe in all of that for our total health.
We have a question from Facebook. They want to know, what toolbox techniques should we use to deal with the social anxieties we may have experienced as a result of the pandemic?
The social?
Yeah, some of the social anxiety. So people are nervous. For example, people are right now are trying to figure out, do you go out in public? You don't know if other people around you are have had their shots or not.
Sure.
And how do you deal with those types of anxieties as we go through?
You can't stop living. So you have to use good judgment. I still believe in following the guidelines. Keeping your social distance, wearing your mask. I have been fully vaccinated. So I feel that anything and everything that you can do to stack the odds in your favor of even, of whether or not you come in contact with the virus, get exposed or not, that it's not going to have a deleterious effect on you. So you have to use good judgment and follow the guidelines. Getting out in nature is a big thing for me. So your risk of being exposed is reduced when you're doing things more outdoors, getting your vitamin D, the sunshine, all those types of things just finding what it is that you love to do and being able to do it in a safe way. Again, that example with being outdoors. I've recently started going hiking with one or two friends that have been vaccinated, and I feel confident, and safe in that, again, following the guidelines. So we can't operate out of fear. We can't just stay in our homes. On the flip side, we can't just throw caution to the wind, because you have that camp of people as well, where they don't consider what the situation is when they're getting out. But yes, it's time to get out. It's time to, again, enjoy certain things, be creative in the way that you enjoy those things, and just do it in a safe way.
And speaking of the vaccine, what would you say to those who are either on the fence or who have not made up their mind to get their vaccine yet?
I encourage everyone to strongly consider getting the vaccine. I believe in the science. You hear so many different, quote unquote, horror stories of scenarios where we don't know all the details and any direct correlation. But again, you want to stack the odds in your favor. Based on what I've seen with COVID, I've seen it all, mild, moderate to very severe. I've seen couples come in the hospital where one goes home and gets discharged and the other one doesn't make it. So because of that potential, I rather err on the side of what I consider scientific caution to reduce the risk of me having to contemplate what would happen to me, if I were to get COVID. So I think the science is good. Nothing is 100%, but we do everything to enhance our health, knowing that it, again, increases the odds that we're going to be okay regardless of what we get exposed to. So I really encourage everybody to get vaccinated is what I'm getting at. I really do, unless there's some really strong contraindication that you discuss with your primary care doctor that you don't think so. But I can't really come up with a list of things that I would strongly recommend that would say, no, don't get it. I think the more people that get vaccinated, the herd immunity, I think we're already seeing a difference right now. So I would encourage people to strongly consider getting it.
I always encourage people the same. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. What questions do you have about how you can start your journey to self-care? Let's talk to Jackie in Norfolk. Hi, Jackie. You're on the air.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. I know one thing is weight. And I know in COVID we were homebound, and I think all of my friends were all pretty much senior citizens, gained quite a bit of weight. But as I was talking to the young gentleman who answered my call, I said, as we began to get out more, and even before going to brunch, we're noticing more and more African-American young women being morbidly obese. And the concern we have is because a lot of them look like, of course, they're not, they hadn't had children yet or any of those other things. And of course, they haven't experienced middle age, which you're naturally putting on weight as the years progress. Are you seeing that more with the younger women becoming morbidly obese?
Dr. Jones?
I am not surprised at what you're seeing. I think the demographics going to just depend on where you are physically at, where you're getting out, the different scenarios. I said a long time ago that smorgasbords need to be put out of business. We shouldn't be allowed to have such a thing that encourages gluttony and what have you. But the statistics will say, I will tell you that obesity is definitely an epidemic. It does affect African American women more so. Again, a lot of times the statistics aren't in our favor, but you have a lot of control so that you are not one of those statistics.
Doc, and part of her, the other part of her question was the whole idea of how we teach, our young women, or we try to teach all of our ourselves to love ourselves, as we are to start. But how do you counter that with also, you can love yourself, but at the same time, it's not healthy for you to be obese. So therefore, loving yourself also means bringing your weight down and taking care of yourself physically.
Right. So here's my approach. When you start doing the self-care, which is a reflection of loving yourself, and you do those things that promote health, losing the excess weight will just be a byproduct of that, okay? So most times, when someone makes up in their mind that they do want to make a change in that area of their lives, they'll try to do something quick. We like quick fixes in this, society that we live in. But I always say that everything that we are and everything that we want to be, it starts in the mind. So when you start working on your emotions, emotional eating will get under control, okay? You'll become more active. You'll make better lifestyle choices. The weight will come off. I believe, I think weight loss and weight control is simple, but in the society that we live in, they had these, with all these colon cleansers, and, I may offend some people, but there's so many products out there and programs out there that make industries a lot of money, but it really boils down to the simplicity of eating a well-balanced, nutritious diet that's not high in calories and getting enough movement. Yes, we'll have those transitions in life, myself included. When I went through menopause and I gained weight, you may be someone who needs to have your hormones checking. Maybe you have some thyroid problems. So all of that, again, centers around being in tune with your body and talking with your doctor. Say, hey, I'm doing this or that, and my weight is doing that or the other. But again, it's a mindset thing that will involve changing your behaviors, and then the weight will become a non-issue. But if you just go for that fad diet, that quick fix stuff, it's going to come back and some. And I think we can all speak to that. So I try to encourage people to practice mindful eating, tuning into your body. There's this unfortunate delay as to when your mind realizes that you've had enough. So tuning in, asking yourself, am I hungry or am I eating from an emotional state of being? All those things, Barbara, it starts with the mind. No quick fixes are good for anything in life, including weight control. But yes, you have to love yourself in whatever state you're in. Your self-worth or value isn't predicated on how you look or what the scale says, but that self-love will motivate you to do what you need to do to be healthy and take care of your temple. But you're going to love yourself regardless.
So if I'm sitting here and I'm going, okay, I know I need to take care of myself and I know I need this self-care and I got all this stuff going on, I have no idea how to get started. How do I get started?
How do you get started? Okay, you think about, again, I'm very big on writing, planning.
Okay.
You ask yourself, what goal do I want to set for myself this week? So, for example, client of mine today, she said, I want to focus on the physical. Because I'll ask my clients, where are you at on a scale of 1 to 5, mentally this week, in this moment, physically or spiritually? Whatever number that's the lowest usually is the area that we want to focus on. So in her case, it was physical. She knew she needed to do X, Y, Z. So pick one area. Don't overwhelm yourself. And when you focus on that one area that needs the most attention, the other areas are going to benefit. So, for example, if you say, I don't get enough exercise, so I'm going to walk 3 days a week for 30 minutes. And then as you start doing that, your natural, happy feeling hormones kick in. It's a natural antidepressant. You, over time, will start losing weight, when you're balancing that out with your diet and what have you. And it's just going to spill over into every aspect of your life. So pick one area for the week, one area for that day, and set some SMART goals for it. What is it? It's a specific goal, what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and how you're going to do it. SMART, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic, and time-bound. So this week, my SMART goal could be, again, exercising or walking for 3 days this week.
And put it on your calendar.
Yes, and put in, yes.
We've got about 3 minutes left. I want to try to get this other question in from Liz on Facebook. Wants to know, what's the best way to deal with survivor's guilt when you've lost friends and loved ones to COVID and you've survived?
Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh. That is a tough one. It really is. You have to allow yourself to grieve those losses, of those relationships. And it just kind of depends on how intense those feelings of guilt are. You may need to talk it out. You may need some talk therapy. It depends on how intense those feelings are. But just allowing yourself to grieve the losses of those that have passed on, and just working through it, talking to someone will probably be in your best interest if those emotions are really intense and debilitating. But that is something that so many of us are going to have to deal with, losses. But if you've been exposed and you're still here, but some friends or family aren't, that is a very challenging situation to be in. And just praying for those who are in that situation, but having someone to talk to, and may need some therapy to work through it.
Yeah. And especially since with COVID, so many of us were not allowed to be with people when they were going through it. And I think that that piece of the closure, and I also think very quickly about your colleagues and those of you in the medical profession who were the ones who sat with those patients. How are they? Is it the same thing? Is there grief counseling for medical professionals as an example, or how are they coping with that?
That is unfortunately, I haven't seen a lot of things in place, at least from where I'm at. I think organizations, only when it comes to, like employee, well-being and what have you. Some institutions have those types of programs. So I think we're just kind of taking it and not really dealing with it, to be honest with you, Barbara.
Okay.
It's something that we as a profession need to work on. It really is. I've had conversations with my colleagues and just sort of a numb feeling, in a lot of cases. Some of my colleagues who are intensive care unit doctors, they see the worst of the worst. They see the patients on the ventilators and what have you. So that's an area that needs some attention.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
Well, Doc Indy, believe it or not, we are just about out of time. I want you to tell everyone where they can find your website. It is mindfulhealthforwomen.com. Is that correct?
Yes, and it's with the number 4, mindfulhealthforwomen.com with the number 4. Yes.
All right. So we want to encourage everybody to get out and help yourselves, take care of yourselves so that you can continue to take care of others. Thank you so much for joining us, Doc Indy. We really appreciate it, and we'll be right back.
I'm with Marcellus, and you all are checking out Another View. Don't go anywhere. Check us out.
And welcome back. Seneca Lofton is an award-winning poet, educator, producer, and a radio show host. And in each of these areas, he shares insightful words that make us think. Our Lisa Godley spoke with Lofton, who not only shared his skill and talent as a master of written and spoken word, but gave us an inside look at his latest venture, a podcast.
Rocket launches in America's concrete jungle and teach the poor and working class how to retaliate and leave a social vacuum.
It's been 7 years since we last caught up with Seneca Lofton. Since then, this amazing poet, producer, and educator has been extremely busy. Back then, he was creating Riot Speech, a format that combined traditional music genres with performance poetry.
I like to fill my super soaker with holy water and spray slick talking preachers in their faces.
Just 2 years after that, Lofton's poems, Guerrilla Ignition and Love's Outlaw, were showcased in the documentary Supersize Me 2. He's now recorded more than 100 CDs of poetry and authored a dozen books.
But our latest work, and I say our because I co-wrote it with a friend of mine, Donna McGee, came out in July, and it's called American Reverie. It's kind of it's a small collection of poetry, and we did it in a call and response kind of fashion. and I could read something from that. That's cool?
Go right ahead.
This is called Singer of American Odyssey. I sing as the threat level rises. Low, guarded, elevated, high, severe. I hear the sirens, sense the unique hospitality, the violence roars for blocks. I fold into self, a jungle cat, upright, fingers on the pulse of concrete landscapes.
This award-winning poet isn't slowing down. In addition to all of his other endeavors, he's excited about his latest venture, a podcast.
It's Dr. Seneca's topical poem of the week. Like I'm a poet and everything. At the same time, I love like news and everything because my writing is all topical anyway. It comes straight out of the news, out of the headlines.
One example came from the controversy surrounding the Confederate monuments and what to do with them.
It's simply called American Mirror. I tried to personify if America was a woman and she looked at a mirror, what would she say? Unpack the history, mythology, and divisive teaching, and allow America to stand in front of the mirror. Allow her to locate her pains and beautiful scars. Some things need explaining. Some bruises need the proper attention. She smiles at her blues, her stories as she stands in her scorn, history, and struggle for all the people to stop, point, and stare. She eats racism, oppression, broken treaties, and gender discrimination. The wars and conflicts affect her breathing, breathing, breathing. With tears in her eyes, she understands heartbreaks and national anthems that don't make sense to everybody. Free speech is complicated. The contradictions are heavy, but she fights for a better image, a better day, a day that represents all complex narratives and attempts to heal all wounds. Justice circulates in her DNA, creating hunger and rage and a possible path to a real promised land, a real home.
Lofton says the podcast is quick and to the point. No need to drag things out.
I got it at 5 minutes now. It's basically some quick commentary on what I think the issue is, how I assess what the topic is, the issue is. And then I go into a quick poem. So it's really just me.
Welcome to another edition of Dr. Seneca's Topical Poem of the Week. I am poet, educator, and recording artist Seneca Alex Chizoba Lofton. Let me tell you something. I am sick and tired of talking about police brutality, but once again, I find myself sharpening words in order to dive into this subject. Now let's talk about Micaiah.
You can find Seneca's podcast at his website, imgorilla.com. We just can't wait to see what he does next. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And Seneca shares his intellect and talent with the students at Norfolk State University and one of my favorite schools, Chesapeake Bay Academy. Thank you so much for spending an hour of your life with us today. If you'd like to hear this show again or share it with a friend, please visit our website, anotherviewradio.org, and download the podcast. And also sign up for our eView newsletter. We're starting to get traction again, which is great. A once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. We're on Facebook, so like us, and I'm on Twitter at Barbara Ham Lee. Next week on Another View, White House correspondent for the PBS NewsHour and the new host of Washington Week, Yamiche Alcindor. Can't wait for that conversation. Our theme music was composed and performed especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer, and Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. As I remind you every week, wear a mask when you're outside in a large crowd, wash your hands frequently, continue to stay socially distant, and get your shot. Getting the vaccine is a part of self-care. You know what? Happy Mother's Day, all of you moms and those of you who are acting as moms. We truly appreciate you. We'll see you next week, next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.